Earp brothers. That's James Earp. He was in there working as a bartender at the time of the gunfight at the OK Corral. Buster, Barney, step it up, boys. Let's go. Now over here on the left on the corner, that's the world-famous Crystal Palace. First built as a Golden Eagle Brewery in 1879, burned down in our second major fire, and has been the Crystal Palace since June of 1882. Keep that building in mind while I tell you a story about our marshal, Virgil Earp. Well, Virgil, Morgan, and Wyatt, they've controlled the faro tables in the Oriental Saloon. That's also on the left on this next corner. Now, December 28th of 1881, Virgil stepped out the front door of the Oriental to make his nightly rounds. He almost made it to the Crystal Palace when 5 shotgun rounds went off from the right-hand side of the coach here. Up above the Longhorn and the Branding Iron was the Huachuca Waterworks. One of the boys hiding up there had a good enough eye that he struck Virgil in the back of his left shoulder. Virgil lost use of that left arm for the rest of his life. As Earps and Doc Holliday left town some 4.5 months later. Virgil continued to be a lawman out in Colton, California, where he died at the age of 62. Wyatt went off to the gold fields of Alaska, excuse me, and ended up in Burbank working for the film companies when he passed away at the age of 82. Doc Holliday headed out of here and went to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and survived for 2 more years, dying alone in a hotel room at the age of 35. Here on the right is the Birdcage Theater. That's the most authentic and most haunted building in Tombstone. Birdcage opened their doors for business on December 1st of 1881 and operated non-stop for over 9.5 years straight, with the longest running poker game in history going on down in that basement. It cost $1,000 to buy into that game, and it still went on for over 4.5 years. Birdcage Theater stands on the site of the shooting of Marshal Fred White. Curly Bill Brocious came out of one of the bars that was down on Tough Nut Street on October 28, 1880. He was standing in that empty lot where they built the birdcage a year later, howling at the moon and firing off his sidearms. He was confronted by a 28-year-old Marshal White who demanded his weapons. Well, Curly Bill handed him over, but one of them went off. That single round struck Marshal White in the groin, took him 3 agonizing days to die. On his deathbed, he cleared Curly Bill Brocious of all charges, and 2 months later, we got our next marshal. His name was Virgil Earp. Now, the reason everybody came to Tombstone is because of Edward Shefflin. He was a scout for the troops down on Fort Huachuca and told his friends one day, "I'm going into Goose Flats to do me some prospecting." His friends looked at him and said, "Ed, you gotta be crazy. You know the only thing up in them hills is hostile Apaches, and the only rock you're ever gonna find is gonna end up being your own tombstone." Ed came up here anyway. 1876 he found the silver. 1877 opened his first mine, called it the Tombstone. 2 years later, when Goose Flats was incorporated as a city, our voting population over 7,000 heard that story, and that's how Tombstone got the name. Here on the right, that's a Silver Hills Trading Company. That was the Arcade Saloon. Site of our first major fire in 1881, when a couple of bartenders rolled a sour barrel of whiskey out onto that boardwalk to check it one night. One of them had a lit cigar. Fell onto the barrel exploded, and 66 buildings burned in its wake. Now, here on the right, halfway down the block, that big cottonwood tree sits directly in front of the Tombstone epitaph. Late in the year 1879, an Indian Affairs agent by the name of John Clum came to town. John said every tombstone deserves an epitaph. May 1st of 1880, he printed his first newspaper. Daily publication for many years. Monthly now, but you can still get a copy of the one that was printed the day after that infamous gunfight. And John Clum was our mayor at the time of that gunfight as well. On the right, Red Buffalo Trading Company, that was Campbell and Hatch Billiards and Saloon. March 18th, 1882, Morgan and Wyatt were in there playing a game of pool when an outlaw stepped up to the back door and assassinated Morgan by shooting him in the back. Took Morgan an hour to die, and the Earps and Doc Holliday left town 2 days later. Look out the right through that empty lot. That's Shefflin's Hall over on the corner of 4th and Fremont. Now, Shefflin's Hall is the largest adobe structure that's left standing in America today. And now on the right is Arlene's. This is Haffer's Corner, where the Earth picked up Doc Holliday on their way to that gunfight. But they didn't go down Allen like we are. They turned right here on 4th and went over one block to Fremont, where they turned left and went down most of this next block to a little alleyway. I'll tell you more about that gunfight when we get down there. Here on the right, the old-time photos, that was a Can restaurant, owned and operated by a Chinese fella named Quan Ki. Quan Ki was said to have the best Chinese cuisine in the entire Southwest. And he must have been pretty darn good at it, too, because when he passed away, there were over 3,000 people in his memorial walk down Allen Street here. Quan Ki's buried today over in Boot Hill. Now here on the right, this big gate, that's the only entrance there is to the OK Corral. And that's not where a gunfight happened. Keep looking out the right, back of our city park against that yellow block wall. In the middle of it, there's a telephone pole. On the other side of the wall where that pole stands is where the Clintons and McLaury's were standing in that little 15-foot wide alleyway. While the Earps and Doc Holliday, they were out in the middle of Fremont Street, October 26, 1881. There were snow flurries. That's why the Earps are all wearing black. And after 30 seconds worth of gunfire at 2:30 in the afternoon, 3 of those cowboys lay dead and dying. One block to our right on the corner of 3rd and Fremont. 2 of the Earps and Doc Holliday are wounded. And all the newspaper reports called it the gun battle on Fremont Street. Now everything we're rolling through for the next 2 blocks here, this is all Hop Town, where we had over 700 registered Chinese living. Now they were all under the watchful eye of China Mary. On the left, the blue-eyed witch, that was China Mary's home, as she was a member of the ancient Chinese syndicate known as the Tong. See, if you were Chinese and wanted to work here, first you had to pay off China Mary just to get a job. Had to keep paying her out of your salary every week, too, if you wanted to keep working. She also operated the lucrative opium trade. Here on the right, the Wells Fargo RV Park in 1976. While they were excavating the lay-in water lines, they opened up 2 buried opium dens. A lot of that paraphernalia is floating around in our fine museums today. Now, China Mary, she died one extremely wealthy woman, and she's buried in Boot Hill, right next to her good friend, Quan Ki. Look out the right, folks. Far distance, that range of mountains over there are the Dragoon Mountains, where Cochise had his stronghold. From 1862 to 1877, Cochise and only 27 of his fiercest warriors held off the entire 9th Cavalry of the United States up in them hills, and they managed to put over 1,000 soldiers into the ground while they were doing it. Now, there's lots of stories told how that conflict ended for Cochise. The one that I believe is he escaped out of the Dragoons and went into hiding in the Chiricahua Mountains, because that's where they documented his death at the age of 84. But he was so revered by his people, they brought his body back to his beloved stronghold, and Cochise is buried out there in the Dragoons today. Now remember, anywhere you're walking here on the streets of Tombstone, you're never more than 80 feet from a mine shaft or a tunnel. There's over 120 miles worth of mines inside the city limits alone. And the mining claim we're driving on right now was owned by the Earps for just over a year. Look out the right, across the street there, that brown building with the dark blue car in front of it is called Virgil's Corner. That's where the home of Virgil Earp stood until it burned to the ground in 1996. However, diagonally across Fremont, on the corner of 1st Street, the homes of Morgan and Wyatt both still stand to this very day. Now, the Earps aren't the only famous lawman that came to Tombstone. Late 1880s saw Texas John Slaughter come to town. As Sheriff John, he may have only stood 5'2" with a size 5 cowboy boot, but don't let his eyes fool you. That was one tough hombre. The house coming up on the left was his. See, if you were an outlaw and you actually ran from Texas John Slaughter, he didn't bother to bring you back. Oh no, he chased you down all right. Shoot to bury you right where you fell and bring back your boot, saddle, or hat just to prove he'd gotten his man. At least 3 of them graves in Boot Hill got nothing but boots in them, courtesy of Texas John. Even Geronimo knew him. Geronimo gave him what I think is a pretty fitting nickname, because Geronimo called Texas John Slaughter that wicked little gringo. Step it up, boys. Now, this is Tough Nut Street we're turning on to.